Property and construction are now regulated industries, so the records of what we're installing need to be easy to find and easy to update. But what's the reality on the ground? Lots of people claim to be providing the golden thread of building safety, but how many are actually delivering, or even understand what it really means? We've been involved since the very beginning, so we formed a cross-disciplinary group of people that are on the receiving end of handovers, so we can provide clients and their supply chains with an industry best practice standard for what projects should provide and what clients should look for when they're auditing handover information. We're starting with a very simple baseline, a low bar that everyone can achieve irrespective of what software they're using. The Taskforce will form a peer group that can assess the competency and commitment of new clients and their contractors and propose them for a Golden Thread Aware badge, which we expect to become a valued accreditation. So, why are we doing it? Some of them are using low-cost 360 cameras to capture the real internal layout. In this case, it picked up an opening in the firewall that isn't shown in the fire plan. Firefighters going into a smoke-filled building would need to know that. In fact, the records had several different layouts to pick from. Does it really matter which one they give to the fire brigades? As one of our team said, it only matters when it really matters. Landlords are telling us that contractors are reluctant to provide as-built drawings, presumably because they can't guarantee they're right. This makes the 360s a simple but really important part of the golden thread. I don't think the digital record side of building regulations has ever been thoroughly policed. A lot of people saw it as red tape that they needed to get around. And then we saw the impact. BIM for Housing was asked to help define what asset information we need to prevent another disaster. We've run hundreds of workshops bringing together thousands of experts to agree what information is really needed to protect people. Joining the Golden Thread Task Force is free, but you'll need to dedicate some time reading and understanding the publications we've produced, and also demonstrating to the peer group that you're competent. Experts on safety critical assets like fire alarms and smoke control worked in teams, often alongside competitors, to share their knowledge with clients and other disciplines, and the next generation. Our goal was to ensure projects were creating the key information in a form that regulators could easily verify. This helps avoid expensive delays at each gateway, which would delay construction, completion, and the occupation of buildings, which could be financially catastrophic for everyone involved. We call it the golden thread of information because we need to think of the whole building as a system that's made up of several interdependent systems, each of which is critical to overall safety. Each system includes individual assets that need inspecting, but that's not enough. Let's look at a scenario where a fire breaks out in a kitchen. What's protecting people from suffocating in smoke-filled corridors and stairs? The first system is compartmentation. The fire doors might be perfect, but if the penetration seals or dampers fail, people could die. The golden thread needs to connect all of the assets that form the compartment wall so it can be checked as a complete system. That's why the fire safety regulations require the location of each asset. If contractors fail to provide the location of all the penetration seals or dampers, we don't have a golden thread. No single system is infallible, so the other systems are installed to mitigate risks. And when there's an incident, they all need to work. So the golden thread needs to know where each of the key assets are located and what's connected to what. Buildings are complicated with lots of installers capturing lots of golden threads in models, drawings, Excel files and documents. In this case, the installer has added a QR code to the door, which can tie back to a spatial model that locates each door. In this case, the door has a dynamic connection to BIM data that shows what information is still missing. It's also connected to the manufacturer's product data, but the critical thing here is the relationship between the fire door, the fire wall, and the spaces they're both protecting. The golden thread has to run into operations. Inspections are likely to be done by different specialists using different software, so it's important they're recorded against the same unique asset to build a history. All of the inspection apps need to locate their pins on the same floor plan, or the golden thread's broken. That's why we need the locations of the asset types, along with the information about the products that were installed and who installed them. It's clearly set out in the legislation, But who's enforcing it? It's like imposing speed restrictions without speed cameras. Anyone involved in the industry knows there's some information will be missing at handover, but you only find out what's missing when you look for it. Clients and contractors are under huge pressure to get the certificate of completion so they can occupy the building. So what do you think happens? The regulators know this, so they wrote this into the legislation. The client has to confirm that they've checked all the fire critical asset information and they've got everything they need. And the contractor has to sign that their subbies have provided everything and that the client has provided them with that declaration. Now these declarations are statutory, so signing it without being able to demonstrate it's been properly checked would be a criminal offence. That risk of prosecution remains in place for years after handover. And if the building's sold, the buyer inherits the responsibility of the fire and emergency file, so they have to ensure it's complete. I suspect there's going to be some heavy drops in value of some of the buildings once investors realise this risk. Here's a good example why the responsible person needs to know where the fire dampers are installed and what type of wall they've gone into. If there's a fire that causes this ductwork to collapse, the responsible person needs to know that it's designed to break away from the damper and not pull it out of the wall, letting smoke through. It's the same with fire stopping. We need to know where each penetration seal is installed so it can be inspected and replaced properly in the future. I guess it's helpful to know that the dampers are somewhere in the building, but I think you should at least be told which space they're in and ideally their XY coordinates. The information might be somewhere in the O&M, but if your kid's life depended on it, would you accept a contractor's assurance that it's in there somewhere? Or would you get them to show you? In my experience, most main contractors would struggle to find it in the O&M, so the client doesn't really stand a chance. To be clear, we're not saying that all O&Ms are bad. There's some very good providers, but something this important shouldn't be a lottery. We've invested weeks and months going through the 2,500 drawings and documents in this O&M, but different asset types are in different work packages, using different names, and the descriptions for floors and spaces weren't consistent. Assets should be grouped into systems because trying to piece that together afterwards is a nightmare. It's like being asked to do a jigsaw puzzle without being given the box lid. But the pressure's on everyone to get that completion certificate, and everybody knows that the regulator's unlikely to prosecute, and even if they do, the penalties are likely to be a fraction of the loss of rental income. So what do you think happens? In lots of buildings that are handed over, the FMs don't inspect and service the fire dampers because they don't know where they are. They sometimes maintain fire doors that aren't in fire compartments and miss the ones that are. It's not really their fault. The handover records should be simple and clear. Despite our efforts to make everything digital and connected, most of the critical asset information is delivered in CAD files and documents that aren't connected, so no golden thread. It's a nightmare for clients to check and for their asset managers to keep up to date. We've developed a standardised process that everybody can follow, connect the assets and systems in an asset information model and identify what's missing. It's much better if the subcontractors get it right first time, so we're working to provide all the specialist contractors with much clearer specification of what they must produce, validate it, and use 360 photos to add anything that gets missed. The key is for the industry to agree the detail of what must be provided and for clients to audit their projects against that. By standardising that basic information for all buildings that need fire safety information, supply chains stand a much better chance of getting it right. So that's what we're doing. We're not asking anyone to use different software. Just use what they have to produce schedules, drawings and documents, but make sure they're referenced properly so that other people can find what they need easily. The fire and emergency file should tell us where the AOVs are and which ones have got actuators, which doors are fire doors, which have door closers or retainers, and which are connected to the fire alarm system. You shouldn't have to spend hours trawling through work packages to find what you need. By following a standard audit process, duty holders will be able to demonstrate they've taken reasonable steps to check that the Regulation 38 information was provided, and where something's missing, flag up the potential risk, prioritise it, and record a plan to backfill it later. The Golden Thread Taskforce provides duty holders with an expert team that's independent from the pressures of the project to ensure that everyone's safe from prosecution or much worse. We've now shared this with the leading fire industry associations, and they're all on board. And so are many manufacturers who are keen to see the golden thread turn into a reality. If you're a manufacturer and want to understand how you can become part of our golden thread community, please get in touch.